Director Monk being the alternate.
All right.
Come on.
Call to order the policy meeting of Thursday, August 22nd for Sac Metropolitan Fire District. And as we go through here, there will be a public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the committee's jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any?
We have none.
Okay. Seeing that we have none, we'll go on to item 3, the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
All right, I have a motion, and in this circumstance, I'll second.
You will be the second.
All right. Motion's moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Directors Monk,
Aye.
Barzali,
Aye.
Directors Pearson and Gould absent. Motion passes.
Okay. Moving on to item 4, records retention policy. And so we have a presentation this evening.
Good evening, Directors. Board Clerk Tilson, Fire Chief Hinkie, Mark Wells, Deputy Chief of Administration, and
Matt Roseberry, Director of IT.
tonight we have before you a policy that Matt has actually done the lion's share of the work on in combination with a committee of and a group of members from admin. Basically, the synopsis of it is this: we haven't had a records retention policy in the district for a long time, or ever, I think. And as a result, we have a building out at McClellan that we pay annually a large sum of money to store records that we may or may not need. And I think it's a prudent decision for the agency to be able to consolidate those records into things that we need. Of course, there's legal obligations to that on different matters as they're defined. And there's also, if you own a document, you have to produce the document, and therefore in public records requests and those types of things, it doesn't make sense to keep things that aren't necessary to have. It not only costs time for the building, or time and money for the building, but staff time and money as well to collect those records. So Matt has done a great job putting this policy together. It is adopted basically on the state. Those in the policy itself, a lot of those dimensions that are quantified at the state level were brought over. Various division managers looked at those to make sure that they were going to be adequate for their needs. And that's essentially what we have before us tonight. And just obviously, this is just the policy committee. It's been put into the appropriate format for, with the definitions. And if you have any specific questions about the policy, we'd like to go over those with you, and/or it'd be, defer to the board how you'd like to go through the policy. It's fairly lengthy. Do you have any questions at all about the policy, or?
Well, less an issue of questions than a statement about how important this is. And I know from my discussions with Matt that this has been much of the policy has been excerpt from other existing policies, which I think is a brilliant thing to do. So in this, how does this lead to, I understand it leads to compliance and it leads to more efficiency, but there is, I take it, a follow-on for us to acquire, there's a service that goes in and helps sort records?
Correct. I'll let Matt address that.
Yeah, so we have to then follow our policy once it's adopted. We have to go through all of our records over at our records storage building. We actually have somebody that's been going through those and kind of categorizing those into the well-known retention periods. And then once we get the policy adopted, then they'll go back through and then verify that everything is set forth through our policy, and then we'll be able to destroy the records that we can.
Mm-hmm. Just,
But, yeah, I was just going to clarify, but I think the question was, do we have a company or a system that's going to maintain the keeping of our records?
Oh, I
on
see,
that?
I see, yeah. We will be implementing an RMS system that's up and coming as well. That will allow us to determine by electronically, you store the files into a retention folder, and then they will notify us when they can be destroyed, so we can manage the retention periods.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a multi-phase. I mean, there'll be that first purge, and then there'll be an ongoing maintenance as we go into perpetuity of a system to monitor all that.
In my previous career, I worked with a school district that had a requirement to retain a certain type of record for that year plus 3. When the auditors came in, they found that they had retained those records for 16 years. So they audited all of them and left them several $1 million in the hole for those audit findings. So and I don't know that that exists in our particular venue, but I am anxious that things that are stale dated are gone.
Absolutely.
When I talked to him about the policy prior to the meeting and brought up some suggestions. I did review the policy, and I found one thing that needed to be corrected on page 18, which is just a clerical issue and shouldn't hold up the policy. But one thing I did not see in this was, have we identified a custodian of records? And under the records management system, shouldn't you identify the custodian of records as the person to go to for these records, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, I don't believe we have.
You know, that'll be something that, in fact, quite honestly, that'll be something, if that's in fact something that we have to do, then we would of course do that. In your research though, so far, I'm not sure if we have to, I would assume that in some cases it would be the board clerk. It would depend probably what the type of record was. And specifically, if it was a finance record, there might be something, we'll look into that. And
Well-
before we go to the full board, I'll definitely have that as a question answered.
And Chief, maybe you can help me with this. We have, there is a term called agent of process, that when something is requested, legal documents are requested, that goes to legal counsel.
That would be correct. That goes to General Counsel Lavra. Whenever we turn any type of PRA or legal request documents over, it would go to him for him to review. The only other types of issues and records, not only would he review, but worker comp records and stuff like that would probably be reviewed by our third-party carrier and their attorneys and that. But it goes through the legal checks and balances before it goes out.
And from my reading of this, this is patterned after the Public Information Act. And so would it be in those cases where people are requesting documents or records, would that too go to legal counsel?
Well, in a standard PRA request, which we do those every day anyway, and actually Melissa Pania in the audience here handles those for us currently. Those actually are all processed according to law, and it is all vetted out through legal counsel to ensure that we've complied correctly and thoroughly to make sure that we meet the needs of the Freedom of Information Act.
And also to make sure that we don't release information that would be non-releasable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it might be a recommendation that it be included in there as legal counsel, and he can direct it where it's needed, just to simplify it.
In terms of what, a PRA request itself,
Or any records request, let him decide where or who it would go to.
Well, and to address that, and I think that obviously having their insight would be, but the one thing that I think we have to be careful of is we have a building with literally thousands of boxes that we're going to be going through, and so each time we dispose of a record or something, we're going to want to rely on the legend and the appendix in here to tell us what type of file. Does that make sense? I mean, I think if it was something of a legal nature, such as let's say a 910 claim, which wouldn't be necessarily this, or a PRA request, but a lot of the other files we're talking about financial data over time, CFO McFarland has already weighed in on the the necessity and timeframes for the finance division. So am I answering your question? I mean, I don't know if we need council to override or
No,
review.
just looking for process and much of this, so perhaps where we're headed is something, a document that simply outlines if this, then it goes to that person, so that we've got some clarity about our own process.
And we could potentially put something in this policy that would say, you know, anything of a legal nature that it would be vetted through legal counsel before being disposed of, something to that nature. But I mean, I think the PRA requests and the record retention policy are kind of two different things. The PRA request should come in, and then we would go to our records that we have and produce what we have based on the legality of that. And we do that process and have been doing it in the past, you know, consistently.
Well, this seems absolutely essential because there must be a massive amount of documents right now.
There is. In fact, it's, and, you know, I don't know if I really want to quote an exact number, but I believe it's around $70,000 also that we spend annually to lease a building to hold this stuff. And so we're looking at the efficiencies of that to, you know, to scan it in, get rid of the records we don't need, have them in a smaller facility potentially, save a lot of money, a lot of staff time.
Well, is there a standard procedure for public agencies on disposing of public records? And if we're following that guideline, I just wanted to speak a little bit to having the attorney go and review everything. I think with that volume,
Yeah,
I would like to rely on our procedures and just follow that and do away with them.
well, the policy in total is really adopted from the state. You know, it's a vetted guideline already. I think we've just really chosen, and really for the most part, a lot of stuff is still in there because there's no real reason to not have something in there because we want to make sure, like, for instance, there's elections results and incarceration records and weird stuff in there that the state might deal with that we don't. And some of those that we went through, it was like, well, you know what, we don't really know if we have an issue with that right now or not, but there's no harm in having it in there versus, you know, if we don't need it, we won't use it.
That would be more my concern is we're trying to maybe invent something outside the box, but it sounds more like this has been vetted through other agencies and it works for them and it's maybe even been challenged in court or whatever, the procedure.
Yeah, if I can, we basically took the state policy, the state of California out of the Records Act, I think it's 1968. We went through what they had, if I'm accurate, and that's what we based it on. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, to your point.
Exactly. That's exactly, yeah.
And I didn't, you used a handful of other references as a guideline as well.
There were a handful of other references, mainly for the electronic portion of it. The Secretary of State didn't have a very broad section of electronic documents, so we added some in from others as well as added our own in there.
Yeah, I did suggest the possibility of a disclaimer in there that, you know, although the records did come from the Secretary of State archives or whatever, that this may be an inclusive or non-inclusive, just something to tie it all together, that all of the agencies and the secretaries already looked at it. But consider that.
Okay.
Any other information you'd like? My questions are satisfied with this.
Okay. Any other questions?
So would it be the pleasure of the board or the policy committee that we bring this back the next regular board meeting with a handful of, you know, maybe we can talk offline and make sure that everybody's, regarding the legal review is satisfied and we could go to the full board for adoption first week in September, first board meeting?
Well, that would make real sense to me. Is there a consensus? Do we need a vote on this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we move this to the full board with the corrections that we've discussed.
Have a second?
Yeah, second.
Have a motion and a second? Madam Clerk?
Directors Monk,
Aye.
Pearson,
Aye.
Rosali,
Aye.
Director Gould absent, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. We have item 5, policy 01.003.02, Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA.
Good evening again. Mark Wells, Deputy Chief Administration, and Melissa Maddox, the HR Manager. Tonight, we have a revised policy that we already have in place. It's our Family Medical Leave Act policy. And in red, we have a series of corrections that Melissa and her staff have put together, really to make this policy more relevant to industry standard and actually good sense in making use of our leave benefits. Currently, and Melissa's going to correct me here when I get wrong, currently an employee could go off situationally and decide to be part paid and part unpaid for an extended period of time. What we're asking for in a nutshell in this document is that when somebody is in a family medical leave situation, which is very common, that they would need to utilize the accruals that they have on the books and before they could elect to go unpaid. That's essentially, and Melissa, if you can elaborate on that.
All or none type?
Well, it's not all or none. It's just what we don't necessarily, and it's not good practice from a business standpoint or industry standard out there, and we've vetted all these through 522, by the way, is that you could theoretically have somebody that is off because they don't need the money theoretically and they just want to be off for an extended period of time and then have never touched any of their accruals while they were gone for 12 weeks. And then they could come back with a full vacation bank or a full sick leave bank. Or they might utilize a handful of hours a month so that they could continue to keep their medical benefits going and extend a unpaid leave essentially for an extended period of time. And when they would return, they would still have a full leave bank. And it just seems prudent that people, when they're off work and going unpaid, should be utilizing their vacation benefits and sick leave benefits as they're designed to be used and not use them in the manner that we do currently.
In effect, this is not a vacation bank, this is an emergency bank for them.
Well, an FMLA would be a qualifying act. It could be anything, just a significant family or a medical issue for you or your family that would qualify. You basically, from the state law, or it's actually a federal law, correct?
Federal and state.
Federal and state, thank you. It guarantees you 12 weeks off without pay, essentially, and your job is kept available for you. We've always, in past practice, let people come and go and use their vacation and sick leave benefits as they wanted to, and a lot of folks have opted not to utilize any of their vacation or sick leave accruals during that time period, except maybe an 8 to 10 hour window just to maintain their full family health benefits for up to a year sometimes. And they come back to work and have a full vacation bank. And also while they're gone, they're accruing.
And let me add this, while they're gone and they use that system, they're gone for a prolonged period of time. And these are in positions that when people aren't there, there's nobody to backfill them. So work doesn't get done. And so, I mean, I'll go more direct to the point. Part of it to me is gaming the system. That might offend some people, but at the end of the day, when they couple that together, the way they were operating it, they continued to accrue benefits on the books. They maintain their medical coverage, but they don't really have to come to work. And I think that both labor and management saw that and went, boy, we need to kind of fix that.
Does that count as a year's work for PERS calculation?
A year's worked. If you're still getting paid, even if you're on FMLA, if you're using your accruals, your sick leave or vacation, your PERS time is still being counted.
No, but like, as if they were doing, like you said, the 8 hours, or just enough to keep their medical going, does that still count for the full year of service?
I don't believe there's a break in service with PERS if they're out on FMLA, only if they go completely unpaid.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that, if,
I hadn't-
that answers my question.
I hadn't
And
even
this was
thought
one of
about
the more recent policies that we reviewed, wasn't it? Just,
Yes.
and so this,
This is actually an addition to the policy that we,
on just this subject, I mean. how
just
much-
on this subject, yes.
Okay.
It was something that in industry standard, almost every industry makes people use their accruals that they have on the books if they go out on a protected leave. The district's past practice has never done that, but it seems more and more frequent that people are using a few hours here, a few hours there, and we just think that if you have, a sick leave in the bank, you should use your sick leave when you're out on FMLA to continue your benefits, and it's never been written down
We would
anywhere.
have to be paying PERS, they're not, and then they're getting a 3% per year added. I could see where this could be a
Well, and then you,
the
And,
district,
and at the end of the day, the work's not getting done.
right?
And that's the issue. You're grinding things to a halt, and that's no way to run a railroad, so to speak, in our opinion.
And it's not trying to lessen the leave that they can take under the law, it's just saying while you're out on leave, you're required to use your accruals to get paid,
Right.
so.
You want a motion?
Do we have a motion?
I think I'll make a motion to accept the changes to the Family Medical Leave Act as they've been submitted and to move this on to the full board for approval.
Okay, do I have a second?
Sure. Second.
Any further discussion? Just one point. Is this in our present experience, is this a common circumstance?
Lately, it has been very common,
Okay,
yes.
all right. Madam Clerk?
Directors Monk,
Aye.
Pearson,
Aye.
Rosali.
Aye.
Director Gould absent, motion passes.
Thank you.
Good
Have a
job.
good evening.
Good job.
Okay. Seeing promotion retention. Any further actions to be taken on the part of the board? Okay. Seeing none, this meeting of the policy board is adjourned.